The delay in releasing the data. 1 in 7 people didn't complete the census, and the low response rate has already delayed the release twice. Stats NZ says it's now plugged enough of the gaps in the census to be able to start releasing data from September. That data will be used for including electorate boundaries and DHB funding. However, it won't include an official count of iwi members. Well, Professor Paul Spoonley joins me now in the Wellington studio. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Gyles.
We hear there from James Shaw that this census will be more accurate than the 2013 one because they plugged all the gaps from the other government departments. Is that true?
In one sense it is, and you'll notice that he talks about population count, so he's talking about the high-level population data. But it's interesting that they won't release that high-level population data until September. However, when you get down to some of the details, particularly around households, people in those households, the characteristics of those people in those households, no, it's not going to be as good as the last census.
Well, the devil's always in the detail. Why does it matter to actually have the census forms filled out?
Well, because it contributes about $1 billion to our economy and our society, and that's the figure that reflects the use of it by public departments and government departments and by the private sector. Now, that's used for all sorts of funding decisions. So anything which requires a population-based funding model requires census data. So let's take one example, decile funding. You need to know how many deprived households there are within a particular school catchment. That will then tell you what the decile funding is, and that will be for the 20 to 2024 period. If we don't know the deprived households in a particular school catchment area, then what are we going to do?
So we don't know where we're going to spend the money or where the money should be spent?
No, and that, I mean, DHBs, education, there's a lot of areas where that base data is required for major funding decisions. And it's still not clear how good the data is going to be. I mean, the Minister has assured us, Liz McPherson, as the government statistician, has said we're refining the data, we're going to get good quality data, but she's also acknowledged there are some areas where it is not going to be good quality data, and they're not going to release the data as a result.
It would be a significant miss, wouldn't it, to have 20 to 30% of iwi not covered by the census at all?
Yes, and Tahu Kukatai's done the work on that, and that particularly relates to Northland and places like East Cape. So we know that the 82% of people who answered online, it's going to be pretty good. It's the remaining 18% that we should be worried about. And it looks as though there's a significant undercount in some of those areas that we probably do need to know most about.
Is there anywhere else we can go for the information that might actually improve the accuracy, the detail of the current census, so that we actually do make some of those or fill some of those gaps that you're talking about?
Well, the Minister referred to that before, and he's really referring to the IDI, the Integrated Data Infrastructure. And that's a good data source, and that's where they've been patching material up from. So that's the data that's collected on you and I whenever we interact, particularly with an education or health system or ACC or whatever.
Are they legally allowed to use that?
Yes, they are. It is part of a common data set. It needs to be anonymised. There are all sorts of conditions around that, but you can extract that data. But they're obviously having to do that at the level of the individual. So it's going to be very interesting to see how well they do that. And $6 million of the money that was announced yesterday is to do that. But of course, when Gyles Beckford goes to ACC, there's only certain sorts of data that are going to be collected. So the question is what's left out and what therefore is not going to be available for the census. And there are a number of areas, but the iwi affiliation is going to be one, and both the Minister and the government statistician have acknowledged there is no alternative data set for that. But of course, when Gyles Beckford goes to and interacts with a government department, it might be that you don't declare or are not required to declare your religious affiliation. So are we going to get any data on religious identity?
So from that point of view, are we going to actually see governments making decisions or making poor decisions as a result of this?
Well, they're going to have to find the data from somewhere because let's take DHB funding. I mean, there are all sorts of decisions around both at a national level and a local level about funding decisions that are really quite important. And I think the DHBs at this point are going to be incredibly nervous about having a good data set, census data set, which tells them exactly what sort of catchment they're working in and what sort of needs of that catchment. And at this point, the government statistician is telling us that there will be, for those essential types of decisions, funding decisions, good data. But we're not going to see some of that until September, and then March 2020 was when we get to see it all.
Finally and quickly, what do they need to do to make sure they don't have a repetition?
Well, I'm afraid they need to improve their online, because I was not included in that because my wife said, no, he's overseas. So I never got a chance to put any of my personal details in there. So there's partial information. But the other thing is that the old system where you turned up, knocked on a door, said, are you going to complete the census form, how many people are in the household, and come back and make sure you did it, is actually a pretty damn good one. So unless you get that personal interaction and connection and get people filling it in, you're going to have the same problems again.
Thank you for your time. That's Professor Paul Spoonley from Massey University, Demographer. It's 24 minutes past 7.
And the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, joins us now. Tēnā koe, good morning.